All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about a man who was, by all accounts, a genuine war hero. He was decorated for his incredible bravery in the trenches of World War I. But here's the twist. This same hero publicly declared that the war he was fighting was a crime. This is the story of Siegfried Sassoon, the soldier who decided to declare his own war on war itself. Just think for a second about the kind of war poetry we usually hear. It's all about honor and glory and noble sacrifice. Now listen to that line. It's raw, it's brutal, and it's a universe away from all those romantic ideas. Sassoon wasn't just writing poems. He was basically lobbing a grenade right into the middle of the public's comfortable ideas about war. So, this is the real puzzle, isn't it? This is the question we're going to dig into. What on earth happens to a person deep in the hell of trench warfare that flips them from a patriot into a protester? It's a massive transformation. And honestly, Sassoon's journey tells us so much about the real hidden cost of conflict. To really get Sassoon, you've got to start at the beginning. We need to look at the young man who eagerly, passionately signed up to fight for his country, and then see exactly what broke him and what remade him. So who was this guy? Well, on paper, pretty straightforward. A British poet, a writer, a soldier, but saying that is kind of like saying the Grand Canyon is just a big ditch. The real story is in that word transformed. The war didn't just give him something to write about, it completely rewired who he was. And that is the absolute key to understanding his legacy. You have to remember, like so many other young men of his generation, Sassoon was completely swept up in the patriotic fever of 1914. He was ready to go. He was eager to serve king and country. But all that enthusiasm, it just couldn't survive the reality of the trenches. This right here, this slide gets right to the heart of it all. Just try to put yourself in Sassoon's boots for a minute. Back home, everyone's reading about glorious combat and heroes. But where you are, it's just senseless brutality. It's mud and rats and constant grinding fear. It wasn't just a different point of view. It was like living on a different planet. And that huge gap, that canyon between the official story and the brutal truth, that's what lit the fuse. So what do you do with that kind of anger, that kind of disillusionment? You can't just swallow it. Well, Sassoon found an outlet. He picked up a pen, and in doing that, he turned all that rage into art. Let's take a look at how he literally weaponized his words. Yeah, for Sassoon, poetry wasn't just some delicate art form anymore. It became his new form of combat. He figured out that his words could be weapons, and he aimed them right at the comfortable lies being told back home. He was setting out to create a totally new kind of war poetry, one that told the unfiltered, ugly truth. This is basically the Sassoon playbook. We are not talking about pretty sonnets here. He uses language like a surgeon's scalpel, just cutting through all the propaganda to get to the raw, bleeding truth. And his irony is just absolutely brutal. He takes some glorious patriotic phrase and slam it right up against the image of a soldier dying horribly. It's a total punch to the gut. And that was exactly the point. You can actually watch his voice evolve right here in his major works. He starts with The Old Huntsman, where you feel the idyllic English countryside being haunted by the war. Then, boom, counterattack hits in 1918. That's just a full-throated roar of protest that shoves the reader right into the chaos of the trenches. And then, years later, he writes Memoirs of a Fox-Hunting Man, looking back, mourning this lost world, and taking apart the very society that just sleepwalked into disaster. But by 1917, poetry just wasn't enough for him. Sassoon decided he had to do something more. He had to take his protest to a whole new level, with an act of defiance that honestly could have ended his career, or maybe even his life. So get this, he's on leave, supposedly recovering from the front, but instead of just resting, he does something absolutely unbelievable. He writes a public statement protesting the war. And this isn't just some letter to a newspaper. This is a serving officer directly challenging the entire military command. And to make sure it landed, he got a friend to read it out loud in the House of Commons. I mean, the sheer guts that took. It's just staggering. And this was the heart of it. He flat out said that the war, which he believed started as a war of defense, was now being deliberately dragged out for political reasons, for aggression and conquest. For a decorated officer on active duty to say something like that out loud, it was unthinkable. It was basically an act of mutiny. So now the government has a massive problem, right? How do you shut up a war hero without making him a martyr? You can't just court-martial him or throw him in prison. So they came up with this really clever and, let's be honest, deeply cynical solution. They didn't treat him like a protester. They treated him like a patient. They said, "Oh, the poor man is suffering from shell shock," and they had him committed to a military hospital. They tried to turn his political dissent into a medical condition. But here's the thing. Even though they tried to silence him, Sassoon's voice broke through. And his legacy isn't just about protest. It's about truth. This is the real measure of his impact. You see, before Sassoon, war poetry could be written from a comfortable distance, from an armchair. After him, that was just impossible. He dragged the entire genre kicking and screaming into the mud and the blood of the trenches. He completely changed the game. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it's that Sassoon did way more than just write some powerful poems. He ripped the romantic, heroic mask right off the face of war. He showed us the deep psychological damage, the invisible scars that soldiers carry home. And more than anything, he proved that art can be an incredibly powerful form of protest. A single poem in the right hands can be as explosive as any bomb. And that kind of brings us right here to the end. Sassoon used his art to force an entire nation to look at something it really, really did not want to see. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our own time, with all of our own challenges and conflicts, who are the artists whose voices are forcing us to confront the uncomfortable truths of today?